When Gwyneth Paltrow, or Pepper Potts from Iron Man, launched Goop in 2016, her goal was clear. Green, clean beauty that is free from chemicals, parabens, silicones, and all the rest of the nasties. In an episode of The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, she and Fallon actually dipped McDonald's French fries into a pot of her moisturizer, presumably to make a point about the purity of her products. While the science behind some of the theories she meddles on beauty is murky, there is no denying the fact that there has been an exponential boom in products and brands that market themselves as the greener, cleaner, more natural and ethical alternative to the cosmetics in our cupboards. But as everyone scrambles to get aboard this train to skin La La Land, there is still a lot of confusion amongst consumers themselves. The terms clean and natural are often used interchangeably with safe, green, non-toxic. There is a lack of transparency in not just the ingredients that are in these products, but also the supply chains within brands. Companies are often resorting to greenwashing their products to maximize their sales. And then there's the issue of what beauty means itself. In India, how has the beauty industry upheld certain standards of quote-unquote beautiful? Does the rise of this parallel green beauty industry actually seek to redefine beauty? And where does this industry fare when it comes to sustainable practices? All this and so much more in our second episode of Amplify. Hi and welcome to our podcast Amplify. Today we're speaking to a very special guest who is the founder of an incredible 100% natural vegan luxury skincare brand. Everything that they use in their products is eco-friendly, their packaging is eco-friendly, and I'm super excited to know more about her thoughts on green beauty, sustainability, and taking care of ourselves and the planet. So, hi Lisa De Mello, welcome to Amplify. Thank you so much for speaking with us.
Hi, and thanks for having me.
No worries. I'm so glad we found time for this interview or this conversation. So, Lisa, can you start us off by telling us a little bit about Kal Hans and how it came to be?
Absolutely. So basically, Kal Hans is a very young company. We actually founded our company last year in September 2019. And the whole concept behind it was that we wanted to create a brand that kind of catered to women being proud of who they were and being confident in their own skin, as opposed to striving for unrealistic standards of beauty. Because a lot of times, like, you look at other brands and there's always beautiful girls with Caucasian features, they're very skinny. I wanted women to kind of embrace their beautiful brown Indian features and their curves and all of that and be confident in who they were. So I kind of came up with the brand when I was working in New York. I used to work briefly for Milk Makeup. I was interning for them whilst I was doing my master's. And, I kind of looked at the way they were catering to the beauty market in such a different way. And I was already such a huge fan of beauty that I kind of came up with the idea. But the reason that I came up with, why it was so close to my heart was because when I was in New York, I met with a really bad accident that kind of left me scarred in a lot of places. And I was very insecure about my body, I guess. And it took a lot for me to get over that. And I kind of wanted beauty brands to do more about that, to make that had scars or that were kind of different to be catered to. And I feel like that wasn't being done, and that's why this brand is so important to me.
I mean, that sounds like a very difficult time in your life, and that is obviously something that encouraged you and actually sort of propelled you to start something like Kal Hans, because you didn't find what you were looking for in the existing market. So when you went through this, how did you find the motivation to sort of overcome the mental health issues that you must have been going through during this time?
Honestly, it took me a while because my leg was completely changed. Like, you had multiple surgeries on my leg, and the doctors told me that I couldn't wear heels anymore, which was honestly the least of my problems. But my leg just looked very different. So I couldn't wear skirts anymore. I think, like, I once remember going out to a bar and, trying, because I was such a girly girl growing up that I loved wearing skirts, loved wearing dresses. You'd never catch me in jeans, right? But when I went to a bar when I was in New York and this just happened, I just wanted everything to be normal. So I kind of got dressed and I was like, you know what? I'm going to try wearing a skirt. And I wore like stockings underneath, and I wore my leg brace, which I have to wear because I had foot drop. And I wore it to the bar, and I was feeling pretty confident, But when I got there, I could notice like people staring, and like someone like was staring a lot and like pointing, even like two guys I remember. And that kind of, I don't know if, maybe it wasn't as like exaggerated as I remember it, but that kind of like really hurt me. And I think after a couple of instances where people said stuff about the scarring, including like family members and aunts, like I stopped wearing dresses and skirts altogether, and I would hide my leg all the time. Like, I loved when people couldn't notice and they were like, oh, you have a brace? I had no idea. You look, completely normal. That's kind of what I strive for. But I think in the process, I kind of lost that part where like I had gone through this struggle and overcome it and, been stronger as a result. I just kept hiding that part of me. And, every time I met like friends and they wanted to go to the pool or the beach, I'd make excuses. And I think that this brand kind of, and, just like with time, I guess, and like really good friends and people that love you around encouraging you to like, embrace that part or not be scared, and it's not, the scars are not bad and nobody cares about that really. I think that's how I kind of overcame all of that.
Yeah. That's incredibly powerful, and I'm so sorry for all that you had to go through, but I'm also so incredibly glad that, what came out of that experience was this incredible company that has such strong values and is such a strong ethos towards natural beauty.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, like, I would not, if you asked me, like, would you erase that part of your life? I would absolutely not. I am stronger as a person as a result,
Yeah, wow. So that sort of leads me on to the next question, which is, what were the kinds of conversation or notions of beauty that you think women in India are exposed to while growing up vis-a-vis the US, because you have spent a formative time of your life in India and then you've spent I think, a decade in the US. So what kind of similarities or differences do you see in terms of perceptions towards beauty or shared ideals or whatever?
So I think that, let's start with the similarities. I think that like growing up, and I kind of like read a lot of like, I read Cosmo Girl and like Cosmopolitan and stuff. And like, I get the US versions here. And I think that the similarity that I saw was kind of perfection, right? I think that like the beauty industry has always been obsessed with perfection, the perfect figure, the perfect face. And that perfect figure and face just happened to be Caucasian. And I think that's what, like, for some reason, I'm not sure why India kind of took on that role of beauty as well. We're always striving to be fairer, lighter skinned.
Yeah. Light skinned, yeah.
Exactly. Have those kind of Caucasian features. And so I think that in terms of like beauty, that was kind of similar. Whereas like one thing that I thought was different in the US is that like a lot of people want to tan. Here they're obsessed with whiteness. So, it comes with like the culture, I guess. But definitely an obsession of looking perfect. I love this whole beauty movement where, everybody's kind of body positivity and, happy with like showing themselves. And like we have so many celebrities that, are proud of their bodies, like Beyonce and a bunch of other people. I think that was kind of what was needed, because I don't know about you, but growing up here, one thing that I was very unhappy with my face growing up. I always was like, my nose is too big, I'm not fair enough, all of these things. And even sometimes when I'd go to get like makeup, you wouldn't get your skin tone if you were a little darker. Like, there weren't a lot of options, let's say. So yeah, I think that like perfection for sure is the similarity.
And I think that's so true. I mean, so even when I was growing up, I think there was always this emphasis on looking a certain way. And it's actually quite shocking at how young that starts for girls,
Absolutely.
Because for me, it was body dysmorphia, I guess, because I mean, I was only like 12 or 13. So, I just hit puberty and everybody was like, you're fat, or you look a certain way, or your teeth are crooked, or, you've got like your ratio to like skin to body hair is off, or just all of this pressure to already look a very perfect airbrushed version of a woman, because you're quite young at 12 or 13. Those are very
formative ages.
Yeah, and it's a very impressionable age. It was very impressionable years. You're quite gullible. You're still kind of figuring out yourself, your body, your friends, all of these different things. So to be exposed to that kind of scrutiny by your peers can actually be quite debilitating.
Absolutely. No, for sure. And like, I felt so bad. Like, I feel like here people are also very honest. And I don't know if it's like a good or a bad thing, but like I'd find like I'm lucky, like because my sister, let's just say, she was on the plumper side, and maybe she was okay with that, but she'd get a lot of comments from people being like, oh, you should lose weight, or you should, so she kind of always grew up thinking that she was not perfect the way she was, which I think is so sad. And people used to bully people too in school. Like they'd give them nicknames like, Moti and stuff. Like a girl was actually called Moti in my class. Like that was her nickname.
Yeah, I mean, my some of my classmates used to call me Moti in like a teasing way, and I remember at that point just being like, oh my God, because that sort of linked so closely to my sense of self-worth at that time. Because obviously I didn't know better. I didn't know that my sense of self-worth or my self-esteem can be derived from a variety of things rather than just how I look, So at that point I was just like, oh my God, who I am is very intrinsically linked to what I look like. And if what I look like is not this, perfect and super like prim and proper, or like a very set definition of beauty, then I'm just not good enough.
Absolutely. And have you noticed it's only for women, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's only for women that like we're derived by, as a person by the way that we look. Men, not so much at all. People don't really care about that aspect of them. They could be good looking, they could be a little plumper, they could, and they can still, I don't know, get away with it as long as like they do well in school, they do well at their jobs. Not us though.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that a lot of times what happens is that, so for example, at my school, this was all like pre-move to the UK, by the way. So this is my Indian experience. So I remember there were guys in my school who were, I mean, I know that this is like, we're talking about a bunch of 13 and 14-year-olds, but they were not attractive. And I'm saying this with like air quotes over here at that age, But because they were good at sports, or they were good at studies, or they were just sort of, very charming and loquacious people, they sort of were allowed that. So their personality was not summed up by how they look. So if they looked a certain way, it was like, oh, but what about this other extremely great quality that they have that complements their personality,
Absolutely. Like, it's even like as women, you could have the best personality ever,
Yeah.
But it wouldn't make a difference if they didn't think you were attractive,
Exactly. And I wonder how that changed then with this experience that was so quintessentially Indian that we've had when you moved to the US, because then there was that added layer of being around white people and white beauty, you know, or like what is considered beautiful by the US or by the West.
Yeah, so I think, to be very honest, I started thinking about this because in undergrad we had a class on philosophy, and we kind of started like talking about beauty in different cultures. You know, I was like an honors class, and we were just like, we talk about so many things, and one of the things that we talked about was like how beauty has changed throughout time, how beauty is different in different cultures, what is beauty, how like basically marketing affects our idea of what beauty is, the way that like products are marketed, or beauty, like all kinds of products are marketed, kind of builds your idea of what beauty is because you see it so often. So it's kind of like it's like subliminally, right? That this is what the world sees as beautiful. So you kind of form that idea that this is beautiful as well. So that's when I kind of started thinking about it. And I think one thing that I noticed when I was in New York was like there were so many different kinds of people, right? You have people from all over the world, beautiful in their own way. And I was so lucky to be there. And like you'd meet so many people, and everybody thought different people were beautiful. You'd kind of get different ideas of what, like, like I had so many friends that would be like, you wouldn't understand that, like, I think he's really beautiful, like, and that kind of broadened my idea of what beauty was. So yeah, I could have been like in any other part of the US, but I'm so glad I was in New York because I think it played a crucial role in like me kind of discovering that beauty could be so many things.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's definitely, I mean, I love New York. I think, I mean, my first love will always be London, but then the few times that I've been to New York, I'm like, okay, this city is like a close second to where I would consider moving.
Yeah.
Because in London as well, I think the conversation or the perspective in my head kind of shifted a little bit from it being perfection to sort of desirability, and the fact that what or who is considered desirable can actually change, there's like lots of different definitions of who is considered desirable. So a lot of my friends, they weren't even thinking about who is beautiful or who is attractive in a very sort of like looks basis. They were thinking about it in skills, like in terms of skills. So, Absolutely. One of my friends, I think he should be happy to hear this. Hi, Andrew, if you're listening. he was always like, oh, I'm like, very, like, because we were talking about dating apps, and he was like, I always swipe right on people who demonstrate that they have like a variety of skills on their dating profiles. And I was like, that's so interesting because I hadn't heard that. So he wanted like the person that he was going to date to be able to, have some musical skill, have some artistic ability, should have like a diversity of things that they were interested in. And I was like, that's interesting.
No, for sure. In fact, like one thing that I noticed as well in New York, and this is like one thing that is like a huge part of Kal Hans too, is that I had these friends that were just so confident in who they were, how they looked. They might not have been like conventionally beautiful, but they were just so confident in who they were, and they believed that they could get like whatever boy they wanted, or that they knew that they were beautiful. And I think that to me was so attractive,
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of other people found that attractive as well. I think that like at the end of the day, like confidence is such a huge part of being beautiful that sometimes like it doesn't make a difference what you look like. It's the way that you carry yourself,
Yeah, absolutely.
People find attractive, I found.
Yeah. And you talked a little bit about marketing techniques and how they're sort of used to sell a certain idea of beauty. Now, whether that beauty is actually, green or sustainable or ethical or natural is another thing, but they can certainly give the impression that they are those things, or that they're trying to aspire to people who are interested in these things. What kind of marketing techniques do you think that brands who are actually interested in making a difference, like yours, how do they reach out to consumers in the midst of a lot of greenwashing that goes around?
I think that the way that you kind of differentiate yourself from these brands that do that is that you kind of start a conversation with your customers. I think there's so much misinformation out there about so many different ingredients, or like exactly what you're saying, greenwashing, pretending to be sustainable and not actually doing as much as they claim to be doing, is starting that conversation. Like, I welcome our customers to ask us anything. Like, you ask me exactly what my ingredients are, we will tell you like 100% down to a T what is in our products, because you deserve to know you're buying it, right? You deserve to know where your ingredients are coming from, what the process is. And I think that like there's definitely a culture that's growing, and a lot of brands are doing that, but there are a lot of brands out there, like you said, that are taking advantage of that. They'll call themselves something, natural or something organic or whatever, and they're not at 100%, right? Like, and if you actually go down and you ask them, they'll tell you. And a lot of times I would, like starting the brand, I wanted to do a lot of research about my competitors. So I'd ask questions like, where did you get this from? Or how was this done? And you kind of find out that they weren't like answering very directly, and they didn't always have the answer. So I think that's how you come to know when a brand is actually, green. Because if you are 100% green, if you are everything that you say, you can answer questions very easily, right? And you're very...
you've done your homework,
Right, and you're very willing to share that information with your customers, right? Because you have it. Yeah, I think that's how you kind of like differentiate.
Yeah, you've basically got nothing to hide, so you're willing to actually be super transparent with your consumers, because you're like, what, we're doing things differently, and we want to share this, information. We want to have this conversation with you.
Exactly. And I think that a key thing that all brands should be doing, if you are 100% natural, sustainable, is kind of like making your marketing a little bit about educating your customer as well. Because there's, there's so many things that customers believe about certain products that are not necessarily true. Like, for example, parabens, right? A lot of people are like, oh, there's no chemicals, there's no toxins. There's honestly, there's so many things like that could be toxic. A lot of natural things can be toxic. Just because we're 100% natural doesn't mean that like things can't be toxic for you. So it's just clarifying those things and not scaring your customers into buying your products, basically.
Yeah. So this is just some of the reading and research that I was doing. So I came across how key packaging is to the marketing technique and sort of the selling of products. So a lot of products, they actually, like, for example, just one thing that I read was lipsticks, right?
Yeah.
So they sometimes make, like some brands, right, they make the lipstick case sort of heavier to give it like a more luxurious feel, or, to sort of be like, oh, you're buying something that's like this big, dense, pigmented secret or something,
Right.
So what kind of, like, can you just tell us a bit more about what kind of role packaging plays in selling products and marketing them a certain way?
So, I mean, it really depends on what you're going for as a brand, obviously. Yeah. Like, let's say if you're hitting the luxury market, you definitely need for your products to look luxurious, And that unfortunately comes with sometimes like a lot of packaging, right? I think that people, when they think luxury, they want to open like 5 different boxes before they get to their product, right? Like they want to like... It's
the Russian doll of lipsticks.
Exactly. Yeah, you want... It's more about like the experience, right? Like I think luxury is the experience, and I think that like brands need to start being a little more creative about how to create that experience with less packaging.
That's such a good point, yeah.
Yeah, but it really depends on what you're going for. Like a lot of mass market products, it's not so much about how they look so much, it's more about the pricing. Is it affordable? Does it do the job? The reviews? If something's utilitarian, then it's all about the price basically. So then you don't need to spend anything on like packaging or anything. So it really depends on what market you're catering to. But for us, I think it was like a little difficult because we are we are like a luxury brand, right? And we were trying very hard to also reduce our impact on the environment. When customers expect, that luxurious feel, giving them that without kind of, wasting too much that doesn't
without generating waste essentially.
Exactly. So we basically came up with like luxurious packaging, but it was all paper. Our bottles are made of glass, even though, it's a lot heavier than plastic bottles. Our labels are paper. So, as soon as like people are done, they can reuse their bottles, they can send it back to us. Everything is biodegradable. So all those things were kind of important to us. Yeah. So it kind of depends on you and a brand and what kind of impact you're trying to make as well.
Yeah. And I think what's interesting there is that the point you make about luxury being sort of very intrinsically linked to experience, I think that's really like that kind of needs a mindset shift, right? Because a lot of people just associate, like luxury means just having a specific experience rather than sort of being aware that you can have like a great experience without being, wasteful of it, without sort of being excessive in your habits.
Right, exactly.
And so what do you think like has caused this move or this shift away from beauty being about self-worth and sort of like something that you do for yourself to beauty being linked to the welfare of the planet?
I think beauty's still about self-worth, but it's kind of, I kind of think that there's been a complete change in a sense where the whole idea of beauty has changed to kind of include, for example, for me, like beauty means, like someone that's a beautiful person is gorgeous, it like cares about the environment, can do good for the planet. And I think it's not just like the beauty industry kind of embracing that. It's a lot of different companies and industries that have kind of taken on a role that like positively influences the planet or, society in some way, because I think that we're all here for such a limited amount of time that you need to kind of make an impact on people's lives and, do that in a way that's beneficial for the world. Yeah. So I think that the beauty industry has kind of taken that on, number one, because we're kind of going back to grassroots, right? Like we're going back to like natural products, things that, have always been good for us, that we know have been good for us for like thousands and thousands of years, to also like kind of taking care of our planet. Like we get everything from this beautiful world, and not kind of like repaying the planet by like, polluting it, like just making sure that your impact is positive.
Yeah. And how, to that extent, how important is veganism to your brand? Like sort of what motivated you to make sure that all of your products are vegan?
So I was vegan for a while. Like I still am vegan. Yeah. And basically like I really care. So I'm like a big animal rights activist. Like in my own way. like but I'm really about not hurting animals. And also veganism is so good for the planet, right? Because one of the biggest industries that like produces waste or that wastes water most of all is actually the dairy industry. If you look at the different kinds of milks that you have, like cow milk takes up the most resources. Yeah. So it's just like kind of, for me, like being vegan was kind of, I don't know, not hurting animals, not hurting my planet, all of those things that I really wanted to be a part of. So that's why I kind of became vegan. and decided for this brand to be like eco-friendly and vegan as well.
Oh, that's great. And you've got like such a strong sense of values behind this brand. Did you find that it was maybe difficult at first initially to communicate this to consumers because they had a certain level of awareness? Or did you find that, people were aware from the get-go and you kind of just went in guns blazing?
A little bit of both. I think there's so many different kinds of people in India, right? You do have a lot of people here that are so aware about what's going on. They're very into sustainability and making an impact, like a positive impact on the planet. There are a lot of people like that. So I did come in knowing that there was already this market of people that knew about all these things, but then there's some people that don't necessarily know about all of this, that you kind of have to educate. So I think that when you're coming in, you have to prepare for both. You kind of let people that are already passionate about these things know that that's what you stand for and these are your values as well. And the people that kind of are not into that or don't believe in that, you use your platform to kind of educate them and talk about why they should be into it and how it does affect them. I think that people don't realize how much all of these things affect them. And I think when you kind of pull them into the mix and you're like, this is how it can affect you, people start to care. They can't not care,
And what were some of the challenges that you faced as a solo female founder, starting her own company and pivoting towards India because you moved back from the US, and what was it like just sort of starting and taking on this big initiative from ground up by yourself?
It was hard. It was really hard. I think that, when you come in and you're starting a business, I mean, I was very fortunate that, I had my brother who I've actually named my brand after, like helping out so much. But I think that when you're coming in and you're starting your own business and it's in a totally different field than you've ever been in or anyone else has been in, you have to do all that groundwork yourself and figure it out. And there's a lot of trial and error and you make a lot of mistakes, and I made a lot of mistakes that can sometimes be very expensive, but you kind of get there. There's no other way really, but it's very challenging, but at the same time very fulfilling, right? Because at the end of the day, when your product's out there, you see people buying your product, it's such a fulfilling feeling, especially when people come back to you and say, oh my gosh, I love this. Like, this works so well for me. I love this product. I love that. That's what I live for. So it's really nice.
Yeah, especially I guess when people are just like, your product is unlike anything else that I have tried.
Oh, yeah. Or like when it's my favorite. Oh, I love that word.
Yeah, exactly. And then I guess what you would have visualized when you started off, you can actually see that in front of you because, there are people out there who are actually trying out what you've made and created with so much labor and love and being like, your brand or your product really speaks to me. And it actually really helps me as well, not just on a whimsical level that, our philosophies match, but actually you're making a difference.
Right. Yeah, for sure. I've noticed one thing about like people that buy our products, they're very inquisitive. They want to know what's in it, why it works that way. They want to know the ingredients. So I know that like a lot of the customers that we're getting are curious and want to know more about how, things work, how they affect them. So that's really nice to know. I think that's really fulfilling for me.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of green beauty tends to be expensive. Do you have any thoughts on like why that is, or if there's any, or just sort of generally what tips do you have for people who are within this industry to sort of make their products more accessible to people?
So, okay, green beauty is expensive for many reasons. Number one, if you're like 100% natural, just remember there are very limited natural resources, right? There's
Yeah.
a limited amount of everything. Synthetic products, you can make millions and millions of tons of things because, it's easier, it's cheaper to produce. Natural products are expensive. They're very expensive. They're green products, if you're using like glass bottles, they're expensive, they're heavy, they break. You need to make sure they don't break. Shipping is expensive. It's just so much. For example, if like, let's say you're making like an a hibiscus like face wash, right? Hibiscus has a bad season, there's no rain, whatever. It affects the produce, your prices go up. It really, there's so many factors that play into that. Even kind of preserving natural products is a lot harder. The preservatives, the ingredients for natural products are more expensive. So I think that's probably why you'll find like green and natural products are more expensive. It just is more expensive to produce in general.
Yeah. And so how can we get more number of people on board with the process and the amount of work that it takes, like the supply chain that you just explained, and to tell them that, this may be, at the outset, what you're seeing is like a slightly bigger price tag, but don't be put off by it because this is a far better product to use, and it's it sort of has a much more positive impact as opposed to something that's cheap and that's just sort of for the quick buck. And it's just like some regular FMCG company that's just sort of making their product super cheaply, and they're just, here you go, buy this, and don't sort of think about it again.
So basically, I would say that, like, first of all, it's just, for me, like, why I got into natural in the first place is because I think that, it's basically like when you're eating a salad, right? You know that the salad is good for you versus like having like canned goods or something that like, like is synthetically made, or what I mean, like, honestly, you could use synthetic products. It's not really harmful for you. But I think, to me, natural will always be better because at the end of the day, you might think of your skin as this exterior thing that's really tough. It is your largest organ. It does end up in your system, Like, if you put something on your face, you get an allergic reaction. That's because your body knows that it's not good for you and it's reacting to it. And it does get, some of it does get absorbed into your skin, right? So taking that into consideration, I wanted to only use natural things on my face. But yeah, what was your question? I'm so sorry.
No, that's all right. No, I was like, I started saying it and then I was like, wait, what was my question? No, so I was just going to say, like, if you have any tips off of the top of your head as to how this can be made more accessible to larger number of people.
Right. I think that, like, honestly, e-commerce businesses are so great right now because we kind of can reach everyone. Even though we might not have like physical stores, like the bigger brands, it's now become easier to be accessible. In terms of prices, I would say, natural products are really expensive. There are cheaper alternatives as well. They might not be like 100% natural, but I feel like they're out there. So yeah. And also just, I think, asking, I think for us, for example, a lot of our customers have asked for minis because we only have the big products. So that's something that we're working on right now because they want to, a lot of them.
That's cool.
Yeah, they want to do smaller products, and that's okay. A lot of companies are doing minis now. So yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah, I think, and that's also a better way for companies like yours to actually get their product to a lot more, or to a greater number of people.
Exactly.
Okay, and I think my final question would be, what would you like to see change, like a big, seismic shift in the beauty industry as a whole, green beauty, non-green beauty, beauty industry in India, beauty industry in the West? What would you like to see change?
I think I would really say for me, a huge, like, one of the biggest things I would like is more inclusivity. I would love for people to just kind of accept other people for the way that they are. Number one, in India, like, color. Can we just accept that we're brown and we're beautiful because we're brown? Like, you go to like other European countries, you go to the US, they're trying to get brown. Why are we trying to get white? I don't get that. It's so crazy.
Yeah.
It's just like being unique, being yourself. Like, there's no one else out there like you, and you only live once. Kind of, like, I want the whole, like, the beauty industry to kind of play on that everybody's unique. We don't have to all look the same and look beautiful in this specific way. That's really important to me. Celebrate scars, Scars are what you've been through. They're your story. Like, celebrate them, like, make them a part of your identity. I think all of these kind of things, and like making beauty not just superficial, making beauty about being good to the environment, being good to yourself, being good to the people around you. Like, all of those things are beauty.
Yeah, just a more holistic idea of what it means to look or be beautiful rather than what it is right now.
Absolutely.
And we have so much power as well in today's day and age with social media that you can actually champion real bodies, bodies that belong to everyone as opposed to just one ideal body type.
Right, exactly.
Thank you so much, Lisa. It's been a pleasure speaking to you. I think we could have gone like really long because this conversation about beauty is just so interesting. And then there's just so many layers to pick up on because we've got such an, definitive Indian experience. We've also got experience outside. So this was a great conversation. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Oh, no, thank you so much for having me. This was so fun.
No worries. And for our listeners, I'm going to make sure that they can find out more about your brand, your products, and everything else by giving them your website link, your social media links, etc. in the episode description.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And that marks the end of this week's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. You can find all the relevant links and handles to know more about our guest this week in the episode description. If you have any feedback, suggestions, requests, or simply just want to get in touch with us, then please do head over to our podcast website. We are available to flag and say hi to via Facebook, Instagram, or email. Thank you and see you next week.